So I've asked Israeli ambassadors how many civilians have been killed. They can always tell me how many Hamas have been killed. But no pro-Israeli guest has been able to tell me the numbers. So maybe you can enlighten everybody. How many civilians have been killed in Gaza?
Sure. So I take the Hamas number that they provide, which doesn't distinguish between civilian and combatant.
I've asked you multiple times how many civilians have been killed, and you don't know.
The Korean War was a 37-month war. 2 million civilians were killed in that war. That's 54,000 civilians a month, every month of the war. 2,000 civilians a day. More than actual combatants. These numbers, these lies, damn lies, statistics, even if we want to talk about the numbers of children, which is, according to the United Nations, anybody below the age of 18, half of the population of Gaza is below the age of 18. And Hamas is historic for deploying soldiers from 12 to 18. The average age of a Hamas recruit right now is 16.
But do you believe, but John, do you believe that the ratio of civilian deaths to enemy combatant terrorist deaths in Gaza, for example, is the best ratio, if you like, that we've seen in modern warfare? Is that your belief?
So I stated that early in the war when there were people doing false comparative analysis.
But do you still believe that about Gaza?
Absolutely.
Spencer is not arguing here as a neutral expert. He's using a historical comparison to justify the Israeli army's narrative. The problem is that his entire argument is built on numbers, and if you build your case on numbers, you should be able to answer the most basic number in the debate.
Okay, so my question for you is very simple then.
It's aggregated.
Okay, but my question for you is very simple.
Piers, what is the...
No, but hang on, John. Let me finish my question. I will let you answer. I will let you answer. Because you've said that, let me just give you my question, which is this.
Sure.
To make that assessment, you would have to know how many civilians have been killed, wouldn't you?
Yep.
So how many is it?
So I take both the numbers that we all have available. I don't filter them through some prism of intentionality and already
But no
criticizing
pro-Israeli
Israel.
guest has been able to tell me the numbers, so maybe you can enlighten everybody. How many civilians have been killed in Gaza?
Sure. So I take the Hamas number that they provide, which doesn't distinguish between civilian and combatants. And then I take the one that Israel provides. I have done enough research on all the numbers of any urban battle to understand when do we have a number and then how is it determined.
Sure. So how many civilians have been killed?
According to Hamas, 72,000.
What is your belief?
My belief is that we don't have a number, but if we take Hamas's number and then we compare it to Israel's numbers of combatants, how many fighters do you think Hamas has?
Okay, let's take the Israel number of combatants. So I've asked Israeli ambassadors how many civilians have been killed. They can always tell me how many Hamas have been killed.
That's right.
But they can never tell me, oddly, they can never tell me how many civilians have been killed. So my simple question for you is to make the assessment that the ratio has never been better than it is in Gaza in terms of combatants killed compared to civilians. You'd have to know both numbers. You have to, right? So my question again is simple. How many civilians have actually been killed in Gaza?
So that would be a question.
You don't know, do you? You don't know.
So when people talk about how many civilians have died, you just started the show talking about an indiscriminate number, a high number of civilians. You too don't have access to information to know that body.
No, but you're the one making the claim that the ratio is the best we've seen. I don't think it's unreasonable, John, in that context of that claim, to simply ask you that obviously to make that assessment, you must know how many civilians have been killed and how many Hamas terrorists have been killed. If you don't know, I don't know how you can make the assessment.
I mean, I guess you could challenge the qualitative analysis of any war in the history of war.
I'm only asking you about your claim. You said it was the best ratio, and yet I'm simply asking you, okay, so what is the ratio? How many civilians, how many Hamas?
And I'm trying to explain to you the qualitative analysis.
But do you know the answer or not?
Yes.
What is it?
It is based on Hamas's number.
Just give me a number of civilians who've been killed that for you to make your judgment that the ratio is the best in modern times. Okay, that's your claim. I respect your right to have a claim. But to back it up, you have to know the two numbers. You have to be able to tell me this number of civilians were killed and this number of Hamas. And then we can all decide whether that is the best ratio of modern times. But if you don't know, now's your chance to say, actually, I don't know. Because I don't think you do you?
So that's an interesting viewpoint if you didn't know that I'm comparing the numbers we all have available to the same numbers that we all have available.
Right, so how many civilians have been killed? You said you're a scholar of war. So as a scholar of war who says the ratio has never been better, last time, how many civilians have been killed?
So let's talk in the Battle of Rafah.
No, let's talk about in Gaza since October the 7th, in the war, how many civilians have been killed?
If you just do literally like my kindergartner math of the numbers that are available and subtract the number of combatants because there are no civilians in war, Piers. There's combatants or non-combatants. Non-combatants are those that are not participating in the war, such as in Gaza. If you're holding a civilian and you're a doctor,
but John, just to be clear, do you have a number or not?
50,000 minus the number of combatants that the IDF have set.
50,000 is what? What number is that?
It is the number that Hamas says is left over of the number of combatants that Israel says.
Right, so how many? So just to be clear, how many? You don't want to use the word civilians. How many non-combatants have been killed? I'm struggling to get my head around your maths.
According to Hamas, all of the deaths are non-combatants.
Okay, so how many do you think?
72,000 according to Hamas.
How many do you think it is?
It's less the number that.
Well, how many is it? I mean, to have said the ratio is the best we've seen, you've got to know the number. And if you don't know the number, obviously your assessment is bullshit.
Piers. So sure, if the entire history of war is bullshit, every case.
I'm not talking about the entire history of war. You said you're a war scholar. You've been to Gaza 6 times. Right? You have stated the ratio is the best we've seen. I've asked you multiple times how many civilians have been killed, and you don't know. Therefore, you don't know the ratio. Therefore, your assessment is bullshit.
The problem is not that Spencer failed to remember one number. The problem is that he used that missing number to make a sweeping judgment about an entire war. That is why Piers' point was not just an embarrassing moment. It exposed a basic flaw in the logic of the defense itself.
Sure, Piers. The entire study of war is bullshit.
I wasn't talking about the entire study of war. I was simply talking about the war in Gaza. John Spencer, thank you very much. I gave you multiple chances to answer, and you couldn't answer. But I appreciate you coming on the show.